I was sharing this feeling I'm having of the naturalness of this process, the naturalness of what it can be to wake up and to liberate and remember. I was feeling the earth and her dream for us and the balance that we can find as we reconnect with her and her cycles and rhythms and really who we are as beings here. And I know there's a lot to living here right now. And yet I just really could feel her being with us in this journey of sharing.
If you're ready to discover hidden wisdom and power deep within, learn how to lead from your heart and soul, and have a direct experience of the energies of life with your own body as the portal, you're in the right place. I'm your hostess and feminine embodiment coach, Michelle Lynn. I'll be your guide as we explore together what it means to fall in love with your own aliveness and how to enter more deeply and intimately into life itself. Welcome to the Feminine Mystery School podcast. If you're just tuning in, this episode is part of a special series I'm hosting called Mapping the Descent. It's a collection of conversations with women about their real, raw journeys through spiritual unraveling, soul initiations, and the deep feminine mysteries of transformation. In this episode, I'm speaking with Kelci Heart, a writer and guide whose descent led her into the deep dark of surrender, shadow, and spiritual reckoning. Together, we explore what it means to be undone by grace, to lose your name, and to be held in the dark long enough to remember who you truly are. Welcome, Kelci Heart. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, my dear. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what's alive in your world and who you are, and kick us off with that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my name's Kelci Heart, and I was born Kelci Heart. And when I was 20, I got married. I quickly gave away my last name and took someone else's and kept that for 22 years. I was married. And just this year, actually, I changed my name back to Hart, but added an E, which to me means from the vanilla alphabet, there may be another way. And that's really what I feel like I'm here for, is to find both go back to my roots and find some deep appreciation for my lineage, for my family, create some healing with them, and also for myself, and also forge another way of being here. And
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you live in the Dallas area. I know you from our conscious community here in the Dallas area, where you are an amazing, beautiful temple holder, space holder, and facilitator. Do you want to share a little bit about your work in the world?
yeah. So I work at Wild Hearts Temple Arts with my partner. We facilitate group events and also one-on-one work with people, really supporting people to come into their aliveness and to let go of what's not serving as they're moving more to re-embodying their true essence and all that that is. There's a lot that goes into it. And we are where we are, and we're growing and expanding as this work is also really supporting us. And
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, you have such a beautiful transmission, my dear. Yeah, you're just such a stand for the evolution that is happening on this planet right now. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to invite you into this conversation. So I'm curious for us to start out with your story. What is the story that you would like to share with us about your descent journey?
yeah. Well, as I shared little already because I couldn't not share about my name without really sharing about my name that's fresh, actually, and new to have this reclamation of my last name. So, you know, I had what I thought was just a wonderful childhood. So and and it wasn't until really I had my own children that I began to realize there was a lot missing from my childhood, things I didn't learn that I really needed to know as an adult. and things that I did go through and chose essentially without really consciously choosing, that were shaping me into somebody that had cut off parts of myself and my gifts and my talents and abilities. And so I began a journey of awakening and feeling and be like, what is this? What is this? Things went from being like what I was told they were to there is so much more. And it was relieving and also overwhelming. And it really sparked a process and a journey of learning a whole lot of things and then maybe collapsing. Not even just back into who I was before, but maybe even like a layer, denser than that into a state of I don't know how anymore. And I feel like that might be what some people call the dark night of the soul. What I feel like was happening was my soul was being initiated into coming back to life, to waking up. And those dark spaces were the places where I had put parts of myself away at an early age because it wasn't safe to have emotions. So then as I'm relearning emotions, it's like it doesn't feel safe, but it's so important because it's such a part of all of my being, such a part of my power, my guidance system, like my aliveness in my body, staying current with the moment versus, living in the past or future. And yeah, I think I'll kind of let that land a
Mhm,
little because
mhm.
there's
Yes.
so much that I'm like, I don't even know how to tell someone my story. I'm gonna be really honest about that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with this idea of a descent.
Yeah, I
Was
just
there a moment when you felt, looking back, maybe you didn't realize it at the time, and that's one of the things I'm curious about, but was there a moment you feel looking back where you feel like something got set in motion? Or was it a gradual slide? Or what was that like for you?
yeah. I wanna say probably the first time when I began having a lot of challenges. I was 18 and I was engaged to get married at that age, and it was a very challenging relationship with a lot of emotional, I wanna use the word abuse because that's what people relate to the most. And things would be said to me like I would have an emotional reaction that was pretty new for me to have related to something that was going on in the dynamic, and their response was like, "You're 18. Like, just, why are you crying? You're 18." And I think that was this combination of what am I doing? Something was trying to show me this is not okay, and I only knew to just stay, to persevere, to hang on, and then also took on that shame of, like, I should be better. And I think that pattern probably also came from childhood. Like, I think some of the dissent probably really started when I was younger and decided that it wasn't safe to be creative. It wasn't safe to have all parts of my body beautiful and bright and brilliant. I was born with a strawberry on my back. And at some point, my sister tried to burn it off with a curling iron because it was ugly. And so I think the truth is that the descent started early on. But like as life goes, we keep living and there is beauty and wonder and things to experience and explore. And so, I went through all of my school days like just being really good at school and just really perfect at lots of things that, got accolades from my parents and teachers and people in my community and things like that. So, yeah, so I want to say it might have been earlier on, but it was really this relationship at 18, I think, that showed me some of the darkness, like the state of this is a lot. This is too much. I don't have all of me to take care of myself. and what I'm relying on out there is a shit show.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so then and then I got married and, things come up and down, but I feel like when I had my babies, something was just there as a call in a way. And so I received my first energy work session, and that began opening things up. And the opening was so beautiful and wonderful, almost like an ascent, but it also illuminated the things that were still very stuck, maybe in the mud, so to speak. Personally, I don't think darkness is bad. Like, I think darkness is really important. Without darkness, things do not grow on this planet. Without darkness, things don't light up in the sky. And so to me, darkness isn't bad. I just generally feel like we've been trained to adore the light and prefer it and be very afraid of what happens in the dark and therefore maybe even create some monstrous type of energies and things for ourselves. So
Mhm.
I had no training or initiation into understanding the feminine, the dark feminine, creation, and how darkness is an important part of it. And when I was having my awakening, I still had the pressure to be a certain way, the pressure to do a certain amount of things every day, and didn't really know how to gift myself this space to be, to let energy move, to let it reroute itself and reorganize, to then let it ground into the darkness beneath me in the earth and be curious about my relationship to the planet that I come from. I thought I came from other places, and I do think that we have a lot going on, and I respect that. And also, you could have just popped me on back out to the Pleiades, and I would have been happy. In fact, I had many prayers of chills. So, yeah, I think there was a lot of resistance and misunderstanding inside me. And really, initiations, I've learned like initiations for many of us these days happen in little bouts and spurts with different healers and people, but having a path and a solid support system, it for me didn't happen and can be rare, and that it's okay. Like, wow, I have become very resilient and very attuned to my own inner guidance and know many things about what helps people, what helped me, what helps others, and what might, be challenging and how things can weave together. And at the same time, it was a challenging journey, not
Mhm.
having, kind of a support and a path.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so it sounds like this has been something that's just kind of cycled through you multiple times, that maybe you didn't even have an awareness or language for at some point. And now from, looking back from the where you sit now, you can look back and go, "Oh, okay, that was an evolution. That was another moment of shedding, of transformation, of maybe the dark night, the descent."
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it sounds like maybe it chose you rather than you sort of inviting. Like, we can have these descent experiences in some ways that we invite ourselves. But it sounds like for you, maybe it's something that feels like it's moved through you without your bidding it to.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely say that's true, including, like, moods, So I had this awakening when my son was about 1 and was kind of found a teacher, finding some this opening, finding the way that I wanted to create my life, and things were beginning to feel really good where I was living and in my life, and then I moved. And this uprooting, I didn't know how to do that either. I didn't know how to do a transition. And so that was again this like something else. Sort of, I mean, I chose, but also I was in the way of living that I was kind of moved. And so that created another descent. And that's happened a few times, and like the loss of my grandmother, I feel like that was another descent. I was very into Kundalini yoga and I wore a lot of white, and after my grandmother passed, I just remember being like, "I am so drawn to black. I just need to wear black, black, black." And I felt conflicted in that choice, but I did. I let myself be curious. What does it feel like? What happens when I wear black? And there was a descent that needed to happen, some deep work really around my lineage that, my grandmother's passing brought forth for me to finally do for myself and, my the women in my past and in my future.
When you think about all those cycles that you've been through, is there one phase that stands out in particular as particularly important or intense?
Yeah, definitely. The most recent one. So, about 2.5 years ago, I was beginning to like all of this and getting curious about the moon cycles and astrology. And there was an eclipse, a full lunar eclipse. So the moon turned red and it happened about 3 or 4 AM. It was, like, fully red, and it was a super moon as well, and I went and laid out under it, and I just said, "Eclipse my life," because at that time, my marriage was not going great, and just I knew I really need some changes to happen. I'm tired of doing this work and, just having the same thing. And I'm ready for some things that are different. And I've been doing some deep work with my physical body and also in the space of the feminine, like feeling into the life that I desire and in that creation energy. And I just trusted that the moon would help me, that this eclipse would help me. And it did. It just really, it really did. So, I then my husband and I were actually trying to open up our relationship, and we were also challenged with our dynamic, and so there was a lot going on. But we went together to a play party, and I met my new partner, and there was just this something that I became very magnetized toward, and it was like a force that both of us felt, and that, now we are together creating this temple and holding space for people, and we've been in this work together, and it's been quite the beautiful journey, but the descent part that I wasn't fully expecting was the part where I did have to let go of all of my old life. My husband, who I was best friends with, he was the person that grew up with me. I lived with him longer than I lived with my parents and my kids and being in a home with them and having the family life that I had been programmed and also adopted to believe I was gonna have for my whole life. And it was really challenging. It still is sometimes challenging. I'm still grieving, but believe I've went through most of the grief and man, like many days just not quite able to move and then just having to embrace the heaviness and the grief and the letting go and then move, turning inward towards trust and also receiving support from healers, friends, my new community. It's been really a beautiful journey, and also, yeah.
So it
That's
sounds like that time you chose it, maybe not realizing that you were choosing a descent or an underworld journey, but you chose it this time. And so at what point did you begin to realize, oh shit, I'm in the underworld?
well, I thought I could have it all. And so while I was managing and balancing a whole lot of things, I was navigating okay. But when I finally realized, like, one, that I made some choices around finances that didn't serve me, that were still in the service of my family, but giving a lot of power to my was in his endeavors that then didn't turn around and create this support, the sustainable support for me that I thought they would, or for him, or for my kids. So, realizing that in the process, I moved very quickly. I really did let this force just kind of take over. And there was some parts of Kelsey, like 19-year-old Kelsey, and then, like, update, like, 20-something-year-old Kelsey that, like, just didn't move probably slow enough, and there are some repercussions that I face from that. So I think it was when I realized that, this big shift that I called in and allowed did cause some deeper pain in relationships that I really cared about. And, like, I wouldn't choose to have an estranged relationship with the dad of my children or not really know their stepmom. And, yeah, those things. So that was about a year ago, a little over a year ago when I really realized all of that. And again, just it was a lot of letting myself lay on the floor and feel, a lot of feeling, and then walks in nature and a lot of prayer, and by that point, enough trust that there is something that moves in me and around me that is a part of life, and it's divine, it's divinity, and I am connected to that. And even if I were to not live, like, I am connected to that. And why not live? So, yeah.
Mhm. Do you feel like you're on the other side of that now?
Mm. I do feel like I'm on the other side of that. I feel like what happened, and we had our DJ at the events we host, we call him Grace and God. And he explained recently that he saw a meme where grief is shown to be this little ball and it's inside a jar. And the jar's, like this big, and maybe the ball's this big. And they talk about that grief actually is not, it doesn't change. Grief stays there in us, but what happens is the size of the jar changes. And so my capacity to hold the grief that I experienced and have compassion for myself and all of those involved has expanded dramatically. So I feel much more whole and alive, here, present, intentionally choosing to be okay and able to be okay.
Mhm.
So I feel like yes, most of the other
Yeah.
side.
Well, I feel like a theme with this descent is that it's difficult to make sense of it when you're in the middle of it. It's difficult to know what's going on. Sometimes you don't even realize until a certain point that you're experiencing an underworld or a dark night. And it's really hard to fully understand it until you come out the other side. And I think one thing that characterizes a descent, a dark night, an underworld journey is a sense of being lost. Like whatever made sense before you descended no longer makes sense, might not be valid anymore. Your geography, the map that you had, it's not the right map anymore. And so I think I wonder if you experienced that sense of, and how you think about that now. Was it disillusionment? Was it lost, feeling lost? How was that experience for you? Were you lost?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say yes, I was lost, and yes, there was disillusionment. What this allowed me to return to and see and feel and heal were moments from my childhood where also I felt all those things. And that there actually became like a part of me that kind of was stuck and really didn't ever get to complete. Like, I'm crying and it's uncontrollable and I can't stop, and I'm being told to stop potentially. And I'm so disconnected. And so when I found that I was feeling lost or disillusioned or like I can't do it, it allowed me to return to and kind of discover some places in me that there were young parts stuck in a certain loop. And so I was able to kind of unfreeze that energy. And as an adult now that's learning how to reparent myself, like kind of give to those parts what I feel like they needed. And therefore then it's like, well, I'm helping myself to not be lost anymore, and I'm helping myself at those deep, deep, deep layers of consciousness where I didn't get the guidance of how to stay connected as a child,
Mhm.
which is okay and makes sense. Like, my parents were also, they believed in a God in the sky and were in their own beliefs. And so the type of support I needed as a child to be okay feeling my emotions and being, um mostly it's that, like, feeling my emotions, but also knowing it's okay. Things move, they come and they go. Anger is okay, it comes and it goes, those kinds of things. And so my process helped me to, yes, be lost and disillusioned, but sort of like find find the parts that were lost and help me to clear the illusions that I created as a little one. Like, I created the illusion that I'm not wanted. That's like an illusion I created, and that there's something wrong with me. Like, these things that are not true.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think I kind of went in a curious little circle, but that's what this process has been for me. Is really like anything that I don't quite, and I feel like is out of control, I don't quite understand. Usually it's pointing me to something where I can bring more love and compassion and healing and then reclaim. Because the descent is about going down so that we can reclaim our true nature, our wildness, the parts of us that, we have disowned ourselves for
Mhm.
good
Mhm.
reasons when we were little. But
Mhm.
it's also a good reason to reclaim it and let that live in us as us now.
Yeah. And that's a really empowering point of view. And I imagine because you have so much experience with all of this, you know, mythopoetic, archetypal, embodied work, spiritual work, that that was really available to you. And I imagine that a lot of women who are experiencing a dark night or a descent maybe don't feel empowered and they do feel, completely lost. So I'm curious if you have a little nugget of wisdom for women who might not have all the tools that you have, how to be with those things.
Wow. First of all, you're not alone. Like, when I first felt these things, I felt alone and didn't have tools. And it just takes a willingness to allow the insight to come, the book to come, the friend to come, something to just really come on your path that can love you and support you through this and illuminate what's there that you do need to see, and also help you to be able to breathe and move in the dark. And that's really the best advice I can give. And also, like, breathe. It's okay to be where you are, and the breath is the thing that's gonna bring you through,
So
really.
simple, so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And also your voice. For me, opening my throat, letting myself make sounds, weird ones, wild ones, and then connecting that with the lower part of my body. So rather than things just come from here, as I'm seeing what's like, letting things come out, like really letting the low body move along with opening what's up here. And Michelle's embodiment practices are amazing. So I just want to point back to you, Michelle, and your embodiment work. It's really, really powerful and supportive. Yeah, making
Yeah.
again with the body.
Yeah.
Body's where it all lives, the dark and the light and everything in between. And also that's where the stuck places are. It's where the reclamation happens as well. And it's really where our currency is. Like,
Mhm.
current being in the present moment, also currency. Like, this is where the richness comes from.
Yeah. I'm of course, it's my bias with being an embodiment teacher, but you mentioned before that to reclaim the earth and to come back to the earth. And this is earth, the body is earth. And yes, like our connection in the upper chakras and the upper realms is beautiful and important. And we are here inextricably knit into this body. And so we do have to do this work in our bodies too. And somatic work can be so helpful. Yeah.
Totally. I can. And there's online resources that are free or
Hmm.
that cost to help to bring yourself into the body. I love yoga nidra. I do yoga nidras often. There's actually a fantastic yoga nidra for grief on YouTube that I go to every time I'm like, oh, there it is. And I go to lay and feel the grief, but I'm not just on my own. I am letting this person's voice be there to hold me, to remind me it's okay to feel this and to have compassion as I do. And I'm doing it through the body versus as much, spiraling in my thoughts. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you mentioned God before. Did
Did I say
you
God? Oh, the
you
God.
mentioned God related to your parents? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you lose sight of God? Did you have a crisis of faith?
I totally did. First of all, it was great. Well, first of all, another thing that happened when I was 18 is I remember much older sister, the one who was responsible for much of my traumas. He was like 13 years older and treating me like a baby doll. She had her own kind of spiritual awakening. And I remember having this conversation where she no longer believed in hell. And I was like, I was programmed. I was this, perfect little Christian girl. And I was like, well, you're going there. If you don't believe in hell, you're going to hell. And my little mind just couldn't fathom, but I did see her. I did see her create these beautiful shifts in her life and begin to manage things differently. And that definitely sparked a curiosity for me. And I think it was actually her that recommended Conversations with God. And that book sort of directed me back like to myself. I am divine and I am creator and I'm here to experience myself as that. And it was a beautiful shift in my awareness and also challenging because it felt like a lot of pressure and I already had plenty of pressure. To be perfect. And I hadn't unwound that yet. So now I'm God. And I think I have to be perfect, but I'm trying to, you know, change that, but that was definitely a challenging time. And then and then I did come back to being curious about Christianity again, Jesus, began learning about, Mary Magdalene and kind of some other perspectives and on Christianity and what Jesus was about and what, kind of was able to weave that into this concept of what God began being to me. And I still have this perspective, really everything is divine. And I would use the word divine rather than God. And if I'm going to say God, I'm going to also say goddess. And I really believe it's these energies that are, looking like polar opposites, but really they're on a spectrum of an infinite loop of energy that's creating and maybe beyond that is a void where there's nothing. There's, like, nothing and then everything. It's like the breathing in and breathing out, and we're mimicking that, and that's also what creation is doing. I don't think there's a persona at that point, but I don't know. So, it's been a journey, an interesting one. I just picked up the book Pussy: A Reclamation, and she called it GPS, The Great Pussy in the Sky. And I was
No,
like,
that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that, reconnecting with my pussy has been a really important part of my journey too. And
Mhm.
anyways,
That book's by Regina Thomasauer for anyone who's curious to check it out. Mama Gina has an amazing body of work on feminine reclamation. So I want to stick with this God topic because selfishly, I want to ask. So I think I hear from a lot of women, I'm having a crisis of faith. And I think that is and I've gone through it myself too, that when it feels like life or the universe or God is just pouring the shit on you, it's really hard to be like, we talk about this idea that, it's all happening for you and everything is part of God and therefore everything is holy. But then when you're like going through the shit, it's really, really difficult to understand, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is this shit happening to me? If there's a benevolent force in the universe, it doesn't seem to have my back right now. And also, fuck you, because why is this arising in your creation? And I think that leads a lot of women to a crisis of faith where it's really, I can't make sense of this within my worldview. And I personally feel far from it. I don't feel the peace. I don't feel the love. I don't feel cared for and held. I feel bereft. And so I wonder if you have anything to say about that. Did you experience that?
Oh, yeah. Totally. Oh, yes. In fact, when you started talking, I was like, yeah, fuck you. Like, yes. Yes, I really did. And I mean, I remember many times I'd get in my car and just drive, even if it was a few blocks, and stop and just scream. And it was like, fuck you. And I don't want to be here. And why? What do I have to be here? And you know what? It has to change, or I'm not going to stay. Just like those moments of reckoning. And first of all, I think it's important to just like acknowledge that is real and it's okay. And I think there's ultimately beauty and and purpose in our existence overall, but I don't think that's not necessarily like a through line. It's not always what we're going to experience. And we actually do experience the opposite as a part of the divine. Like the contrast is a part of our wholeness. Having experience of being really like contracted is an important part of being able to open. And like in birth, in order for birth to happen, there's contractions and they're doing this. And then there is a birth. And then it's the next thing and the next thing. And so like wow, just the wonder of creation. I think that there is an element which is our mental construct that tells stories, which for me is the thing that would take me really into the darkest places. But in when I'm saying it now, what I mean is a place of judgment, a place of criticism. Like I'm not okay, it's not okay, and the deep, deep, deep fear that I'm going to be punished. So if we actually connect this back to God, we've been living under, in this the I feel like the climate we've been in, the soup we've been in, it many is something is I don't even want to say this. Like there's something to achieve. There's a way to be. And if we're not that, then we could be punished, judged, and something's wrong. And those are the areas that I think it's important to look and potentially let go of some of those thoughts and be curious about what would be more helpful way to think of myself and life. I don't know if that's helpful. Also, there's people that just arrived and there's noise behind me. So
We can't hear it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is a super interesting part of this conversation for me because I've had moments where I completely fell away from any of those practices that connect me, that support me really. Those are things that I find nourishing and supportive, and I get fuel from my spiritual practices, from those things that remind me. I sometimes call them rituals of remembrance because it just reminds me. And I need to be reminded every day, like sometimes multiple times a day. I think a lot of us do. But I've had moments where I've completely fallen away from all of those things, even though that probably was a thread that would have been that I needed to be doing that, but I didn't. because I had just lost such faith in it. And I've also had moments of just going through the motions with things, but not really feeling the devotion in my heart to what I was doing. So just being a little mechanical about it. And I think when you're going through it, it's really hard to make sense of it. It's really hard to understand. So do you feel like you had a moment where you moved through that and you were able to like relocate yourself in relationship to something greater than you?
Yes, I do. I feel like it has happened again and again and again, honestly. Sometimes I'm on my own. Sometimes it's because I have allowed myself to see a practitioner that is supporting me. Usually that's when really I find a young part and like she's in a state of disarray or she's been punished or or it's something from my lineage that's in my DNA, and there's just really something to alchemize there. There's something to learn, and there's some way to find the power back in my body, not out in story but like back in my body. And again, that happens again and again and again, and it just varies in the way of how and when, and I can't always control it, like you said, I can't. It's not always the remembrance ritual that just flows, and yes, there it is. Sometimes that is monotonous and annoying, and fuck that too. You know? Mostly when I do receive support from others, I do soften and I do find a place of reconnection that I'm grateful that I have that kind of trust, at least for myself. There have been times when I've known, like, no, this isn't it. I can't get what I need here. And I just kind of am in this state I'm in until something shifts. Plant medicines have helped me. Bufo has helped me, which is a toad medicine. It's probably helped me the most. I would say, yeah, and homeopathic medicine. So there's medicines that I've also used myself because I mean, I really, this time last year was just not sure about any of it. So, anyway,
I love this thread that you're bringing in because it's as honestly, it's something that I hadn't really considered yet until hearing you say this, but that we can almost lean on other people's faith when we're having a crisis of faith. And not only other people, but you're also talking about like plant medicines, which is maybe a spirit, or you also talked about your inner child. And so maybe ancestors is another thread that could come in. I didn't really think about borrowing faith before now, but I think that's one thing I'm taking from what you're saying is like we can borrow faith from other people when we're going through a crisis of faith on our own.
yeah.
We can borrow other people's trust, other threads of trust.
Yeah, definitely, we can. And another thing I've borrowed is, like, nervous system regulation. So
Say more about that.
being in a space where someone is either very, very regulated and able to be with me, like, physically, or where is willing to co-regulate with me. And then my nervous system can feel that and begin to regulate on its, more fully as well. That can look like sitting back to back with someone, and so, that person maybe is just a bit more regulated than me, and they're breathing more deeply and regulating, and as that's happening, wow, oh, my nervous system begins regulating. And what that I think does is, when the nerves are like these little things, and like when they're like this, you know, wherever it comes from, they're like this. And when they do this, gosh, everything really can change in my mind, in my body, in my emotions. So nervous system regulation and being able to co-regulate with another who is maybe a bit more regulated or a lot more regulated is another way of borrowing.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, we think that our thoughts make our emotions and then fuck up our nervous system, but it's actually the other way around most of the time. that our nervous system creates emotions that then we create our thoughts from.
Yeah. And our nervous system created patterns. And it's like, well, where did it create the patterns? A lot of times in relationships with other people. And so
Mm,
so that's a great place to change the pattern. I'm safe with
mm,
you.
mm, mm,
Wanted, I belong. In those
mm,
so those are thoughts, but, like, if we're giving our nervous system the experience of that, then that creates our feelings, and then our thoughts can more easily believe that as well. So, I love that, the reversal.
mhm, mhm.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
real. That's real. Oh, I love that. Thank you.
So, how did you know that was there a moment where you felt like things really started shifting and you started moving out of this phase of being in the descent and into coming back out into a different energy, let's say?
Yeah. Well, I do wanna mention the book I discovered over Christmas, Existential Kink, which I'd been hearing about, but I finally listened, and it was like a huge aha for me. It gave me a lot of context for this concept of, well, being God and having is wanting. And so if here I am, I've lost everything, but I'm also kind of beginning to do new things but I'm grieving and here I am, having is wanting and learning how to embrace and even begin to enjoy, where I am, what's going on, and I think that in beginning to embrace and enjoy is another way of sort of like letting the nervous system just kind of chill out because now I don't have to go fucking change it and fix it, which by the way is a part of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fix. Like I've got to fix it because something's not right. It's on me to fix. So I kinda just could, like, relax that part and begin playing and exploring and could really begin to trace, like, well, I feel stuck. Well, oh, I'm beginning to have awareness is where that came from, and I could do some inner child work and some body work and stuff to kind of let that shift. And so I think that was a turning point towards my power and just even the power to just be where I was, where I am
Hmm.
and things, really started to change. Also, I did begin working with Bufo, and Bufo includes 5-MeO-DMT, which is the substance that we release when we're born and when we die. And it's then otherwise rarely released in the body. It can be released through breath work, and also we can in take it into our body and have a similar kind of like a healing response. And so I believe that medicine deeply moved me more quickly through the process I was in. The minute I took it, I was like, "Awful, awful, awful, awful. When is it gonna stop? Is it ever gonna stop?" Like, I just went to the depths of the misery and the despair, and then I was drawn out. Like, it takes time. It takes the time it takes, and our hearts are big enough to hold it all, and then I realized that awful is also awful, and the and, which is life, and so I actually even began to be grateful for the day because there's still days I don't wanna move. I know I'm experiencing grief or just, like, dread, and I'm not ready, and I give myself space, and that's okay, and I even welcome, like, "Okay, like, mystery, dark, space, I know that you have something for me." And feeling and pain, I also know you have something for me, and also I in surrender, it allows the opening, and then it continues versus kind of, like, getting stuck in the mud, which I do think happens in our descent and has happened a lot. I'm not getting as stuck in the mud. There's more
Mhm,
lotus blossoming, so, yeah, so that's
mhm.
where I'm at now.
I really want to draw forward a few things that you said, which everything you said was so important, but I want to just really draw forward a couple things. One is that being with what is energy, because in my experience working with women, we want to get out as quickly as possible when we're in the underworld. It's like you were saying with the fixing, like, how do I make this stop? And quite often these things go on longer than we think they should. We think, even if you kind of get right with the idea that, oh, I'm going to go through some transformation and there's going to be like a cute little, death and rebirth. And we're like, that should take X amount of time. I'll go to bed for the weekend and then it'll be better. And we think that it should be done. And quite often it's not. It goes on and on sometimes to the point where we're like, is this just how it is now? And, so being with what is, I think, is one thing I want to draw forward from what you're saying, not just like being in the process, but you're also talking about just being with what is happening in the body. And I love existential kink as a sort of playful way of how do we actually be with those really terrible things? And how do we tell a story about them that gives us some energy instead of just makes us feel hopeless and like we are stuck in the mud? So those are a couple things. And the other thing, you talked about medicine, you talked about plant medicine, but it's coming to my mind right now as we're having this conversation that there's so many medicines that we can receive. If plant medicine doesn't resonate with you, maybe it does, or but maybe it doesn't. But there are so many different medicines to receive. You talked about receiving the medicine of another person's nervous system and the medicine of another person's faith and the medicine of a book coming to you at just the right time with just the right piece of information. And I'm sure there's many more that I'm not even going to think of off the top of my head right now. But yes, seeking out medicine. So there is this one element of just being in it, just surrendering. And there's a other aspect that feels like it's coming through this conversation of there's medicine for me here, even if it's just the medicine of supporting me to be with and to rest in.
Yeah, for sure. And what I also wanna say about medicine and, like, existential kink and mud is, like, I love swishing my feet in mud. I know what it's like to feel like I'm stuck in mud, and I use that analogy, and I get frustrated by it, and, like, I love mud, and so going and letting myself have an animated activity that, like, kind of is the thing that I think is happening that I don't love, but finding a way to love it, it does something. It's alchemical, it's magical. That's just one example, but also, like, if someone feels like they're stuck and maybe bound, like shibari is a great tool and medicine because you actually do get bound and you have the full experience of it, but then you get the feeling of everything comes off and the energy expands and your body is like, and so I think being creative is a key. And I know for me, growing up the way I did, there was the creative energy really got stifled. It was color inside the lines. Do this art project this way. Write your book report like this. And everything became sort of homogenized. And there's an invitation to kind of let some of that go and color outside the lines and unbox your own creativity. And that is a great way to move some energy and move through experiences, really just the experience of life. We can move that way more.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. Super somatic too, because you're actually putting the body into a situation. You mentioned the book Pussy, and one of the things that stands out in my minds about that book is the story that Mama Gina tells about the day that she felt like absolute garbage, and she went and got a trash bag and put a trash bag on like a dress and just stomped around her house like, well, I'm just trash, and so I'm just gonna let myself be trash today. And how
I
alchemical that
know.
was for her because it allowed her to move that feeling and that energy through in a productive way
Yeah.
rather than squishing it down or
Freedom to not have to be different than what it is like real freedom.
yes.
Yeah,
But
it's
we
great.
we we worry that we're gonna get stuck there in the mud forever.
Yeah.
Like if I put this trash bag on and just be trash, maybe I'm just gonna be trash forever.
Forever.
And I will say from my perspective, and I'm curious to hear yours, I've been with so many women in the depths of feeling and emotion, and I've never lost a woman there. And myself, I've also never been completely lost there. It always moves through as it does because this feeling, flowing life force energy, that is the nature of it. It's always feeling and flowing into something else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that is a part of the reclamation, is the trust, regaining trust with our life force and with our body as nature, which is in constant flow and movement and change. And
Mm.
that's been for me anyways, is regaining trust in the intelligence of my body and my emotions and even my mental constructs.
Mm. And I imagine that's
Mhm.
experiential.
It's experiential, but
You can't think your way into it.
no, you can't think your way into it. It's helpful to acknowledge, oh, somewhere along the way, I learned how to override my instincts, and I did learn how to objectify this, all of this, and the things outside, as well. And but wow, what if things are not just this object that's like, just the matter that it is, but there's a force and a flow and an intelligence and like and communication also between different things that we can't even hear, but it's happening. So
Mm.
just this concept of there's more, I think, is a helpful thing to be curious about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to hear from you. Did you feel like you gained some jewels or some treasures in the underworld that you carried back out with you? And what are those?
Well, my comfort in my body, yeah. Like, I'm comfortable in my body, I'm comfortable being naked with my own self in the mirror and around others. That's a jewel for me. My pleasure, having a high capacity for pleasure and my capacity to feel other things as well. The emotional energy that I get to be with and embody and that guides me. Those things. Also, like many humans that I now, like, would call family, who have been with me and been there for me that I didn't know before, and I maybe wouldn't be as close to if I hadn't allowed myself to be vulnerable and invite care and support from them. Mm. And I feel more balance with the earth. I still feel curious about what my role is as the planet, lives on, and here I am. But yeah, I feel like there's a gem that's maybe still forming there.
Mhm. And what has this taught you about the path of evolution or initiation?
Oh, well, a little bit the path of initiation is that, what is seen in one moment, who knows where in time that exists? And so not getting too far ahead, like, don't get ahead of yourself is something I tell myself so that I can kind of stay in the moment because I do feel like some of the initiations I experienced opened my ability to see what I might be a part of creating. But it was like years later and still is ahead some of the things that I felt connected to, and that was really challenging for me, and I don't know if I wish I would have known, but maybe had a little bit more mentoring as my initiations were happening. Yeah, and the importance of pace and space, again, just it's okay to slow down, and, like, time really can shift and change based on your choice to operate in care of yourself, and I wanna remind myself of that often.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and I really feel like magic and synchronicity is real, and the more I surrender to the divinity in and around me, and then really do allow that time and space to be in stillness, the more synergy happens, and yeah.
Mm. Mhm. Love all that. Were sharing with me before we hit record that you were in this sound bath and that things started moving through you and coming through you, which I think speaks to something I want to, as we're drawing towards the close of this conversation, I want to point us towards, which is the larger context of this conversation. It feels important to me to have this conversation right now. This feels like we need to be something wants to move through into our collective consciousness around this theme, this topic. And it seems like you were having a little bit of that experience too, almost like there was something that wanted to move through you and be communicated and be spoken. So I just want to invite you to speak about that experience and maybe if you have any thoughts about the larger context of the importance of this conversation.
Yeah, it does feel really important, and I think I'd gotten your email and just kind of thought, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna be wanting to do that." And then I was in a sound bath. It's like a 2.5-hour sound bath that a couple does at our temple, and I was really deep, and I was just aware of these, like, little nuggets of, "Oh, yeah, my journey and the dark night of the soul, and wow, darkness isn't bad, but woo, we're not like, used to it, and how do what all is there, and I was remembering also this practice called Latihan that we host at our temple, which is a blindfolded movement practice. It is one of my favorite things because it's just moving from the energy inside and moving very, very, very slowly, and there you might feel another, and there might get to be movement, and I won't say more, but it's literally just an experience. It's alchemical. And I was, seeing that and there was so much that was coming to me and mostly I just felt like, wow, there's a lot here and it feels like a strong call that we talk about it. And in particular that we are willing to help each other to hold out a hand and say like you're not alone. It's okay because I know for me, like, that's one of the most challenging parts was the times I really felt alone and like I was gonna just drown in all of that emptiness alone. And that's one of the gems as well, is like, I'm okay now being alone. Emptiness is an important thing that I cultivate inside myself from time to time. And so much can come from that space. And it's not where I want to be all the time. And I need people and to know I'm not alone. And so I feel like, yeah, also as the world is changing, there's a lot of change happening and we do need to support our nervous systems together to be able to regulate through this change and be in our creative power as well. And that's like just beyond the I fix it and I keep it how it needs to be in control. There's like a deeper force of the power that connects us that I feel like we can support people in connecting to.
And I love that. Yeah. Yeah, so important because we are really in a moment collectively where I feel like almost collectively we're in a descent or an underworld where, things are changing. We don't quite know. We're a little lost. We're not sure of the geography. We're in the unknown. We're in the underworld right now collectively. And how we be with those phases in our own bodies gives us the grace for how to bring that, how to bring the consciousness around this for the collective on behalf of the collective. It's a really important moment historically and for humanity really. And so how we move through our own dark night says something about how we are collectively moving through those things. And I think those of us who are really called to this path are, we have an opportunity almost to doula this death and rebirth. Women typically have held the gate, the portal between the worlds at birth when a soul is coming in and also at death when a soul is leaving. And so I do feel that there's some beautiful responsibility, divine responsibility we have as women who have these codes in our bodies to midwife this transition. And so I think part of, and you can tell me if this feels true for you too, part of us going through these initiations is so that we can awaken this type of skill and grace and wisdom for navigating those realms, navigating between the world, navigating between death and birth and transformation and the alchemy that happens in the in between.
Yes, yes. Mhm. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And even to make friends with death because I again, I didn't know how to handle death really, and and to make friends with death seems really important as there is a lot of, things that are potentially dying away that we're very accustomed to having. And in the process of that, then we can it's almost like an offering so that that energy can come back into creation energy for
Mm.
what to emerge. Yeah.
What, anything else? Any other bits of wisdom that you want to offer, particularly for the woman who might be in the middle of this experience right now?
Oh. I just yeah, I feel the earth again. I think I want to end where we started. Like as we're talking about death and doulaing and offerings, like it might have been sometimes just going through the motions, but I kind of became being curious about when I could making an offering to the earth. Whether it's like flowers that had dried in the vase and I would find a place to put them and make a little mandala or just throw them down. You can have it back. It's done. It's dead. And because the earth is alive and a great transmuter of energy and can support us in the alchemy and transformation, like it takes leaves and horse shit and like makes flowers grow. And so if you're feeling energy that you don't think you can handle on your own, you don't have to. And you don't, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be another human service system you borrow from. Like, and it maybe instead of borrowing, the thing to do is to
Mm.
offer something to the earth. The horses, I work with horses, doing horse therapy with the horse, a herd called Horses Heart and Soul. And they taught me how I can take stories and I can send that story to the earth. Emotional energy that's a little too much for me, the earth can take some of it or all of it. And really, how important it is to be grounded. They say, like, all four, limbs on the ground because they have all four. They mean our feet. And they also teach us a lot about being in the heart as well and letting the heart give us its wisdom. And I know sometimes it's easier saying these things than doing them. And an offering to the earth can open portals. It can really open paths and portals that can continue to support you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was even thinking if it doesn't feel like you could even offer flowers, maybe even just offering your grief to the
Yeah.
earth.
You're
You
great.
know, we
Yeah.
water the soil with our tears.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, grief, anger, I couldn't handle some of my anger if it wasn't for the earth that's like, "Yep, you're not alone. Here, let it be bigger than it is inside you because it needs to be. It needs to be shared."
Mm.
And yeah, yeah, and if it's, not those things like a banana peel,
Yeah,
or a carrot, like
I think that's so important to remember because the earth knows how to compost.
It knows
The
how to
earth knows how to Yeah.
it knows how to change, and it knows how to be dark, and, I have these snapdragons that I began noticing what their little buds looked like before dark, and then the next morning, and it's overnight is when they bloom. Overnight's when they grow. It's not
Mhm.
happening so much during the day. It's when it
Yeah.
gets dark and it's cooler. And so the yin of the darkness, I believe we're afraid of the yin of the darkness because we have so much just, and using we, and forget
Mhm.
that, but I can use, you know, like productivity, the things that are the achievements, the accolades, the things we can see and celebrate, and all of that is really important. And also in colonization and all the things, there was definitely moving the yin like into a shadowy place where it's not celebrated in its fullness of what it is as darkness and a place of fertility. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's not gonna be uncomfortable and all the things that we talked about, Michelle. It just means there is potentially some gem that can come that is making friends with the darkness
Mhm. Mhm.
and that powerful energy of transformation.
Yeah. I mean, on the feminine mythopoetic path, the light feminine is so celebrated and desired. This is like the pregnant, overflowing, giving feminine. And we still, in our own bodies, we fear that other half of the cycle, which is also necessary.
Yeah.
Nothing in nature, I mean, again, bring it back to earth and nature, nothing in nature grows without a decay cycle and a death cycle. And we don't, I feel like it's so important what you're saying about the earth because we don't have to rationally understand with our brains how something composts and becomes new growth. We don't have to understand that, but the earth holds that wisdom and we can almost download a knowing, a gnosis about it just from interacting with her, with Mama Earth. And you're so connected to Mama Earth too. I really see that you make flower essences and plant seeds and speak to the spirits of the flowers and the trees and you walk barefoot.
That's true. I grew up in the country, so it's been with me for a long time.
One of my first times I spent with Kelsey, we went for a hike and she walked the whole hike barefoot through the forest. I thought, who is this nature fairy?
Oh, yeah.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm.
this has been such a rich and juicy conversation. Is there anything else that feels like it's really burning to come through?
I
You
feel
feel
it's
complete.
complete. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, I want to invite you to share if people want to get in touch with you. I know you do body work, you do some one-to-one work. If people are local in Dallas, how can people reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah. You can find me at Kelci Heart and on Instagram or Facebook. I rarely check Instagram, but I would find you in a couple weeks, probably your message. And in addition, you can email me, and that's at Heart Kelsey. And my name Kelsey is Kelci, which you'll probably see in the show notes. Right now, I don't have a website, but that's something I'm working on. And Wild Hearts Temple Arts, you can be curious about that and some of the things we do there. And yeah, I'd love to work with anyone who is curious about what I can offer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Thank you for being here. This is medicine for me. I'm really taking a lot from this conversation. I know it's going to be such a powerful offering for all the women who listen to it too.
Yeah, thank you so much for Michelle. Thank you for doing this for
Yeah.
all of
Thank
us.
you. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Goodbye.
Oh.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please leave a review. It really does help get this podcast in front of more people. And come check out my offerings at embodiment-alchemy.com. If you're a way shower who wants to fully express your gifts in the world, then Force of Nature is for you. I mentor leaders, creatives, and messengers who are here to dream a new world into being. If you know you're here to lead, but want to do it in a new way that reflects your deepest held values and truths, and honors your feminine being as a source of power in its own right, I can help you. Many times, leaders and way showers feel their insides don't match their outsides. They want more clarity about their gifts and role in the new paradigm. They want access to deeper sources of intelligence and support getting unblocked so they can show up more powerfully. If that resonates, you're exactly the kind of person I do my best work with as a coach. come check out my bespoke mentorship, Force of Nature, for women who want to move the world. The link for Force of Nature is in the description for this episode, or you can head to embodiment-alchemy.com to find out more.